I'd love to let you get started.
Okay, great. Um, Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm psyched to be here and get the opportunity to meet you guys. This is a really collaborative workshop, and I'm really looking forward to hearing all the different experiences from all the coaches and sports represented in the room. I've been very fortunate to have the game of basketball play a large and positive role in my life, both as a player and as a coach. And something you should know about me is not only do I love basketball, but I love winning, and I love competing, and I love progress. This is the fabric of who I am as a person, as a player, and as a coach. So about 5 years ago, when I first started coaching at Harvard, I went to a PCA workshop, and I was brand new to coaching and just looking for anything that would help me learn to be a better coach, to help my players, and to help us win more games. And I certainly learned several things that day that I felt I could use to improve our performance and our ability to win. But in addition, the workshop really hit home with me in a lot of ways. PCA's mission is to transform youth sports so that sports can transform youth. And that, I was picking up what they were putting down with that one. Hearing it, I was like, wow, I can not only impact the girls' ability to play on the court, but also their self-concept, their self-belief, the way they think about the world, the way they learn about life. All those things were so important to me. And coaching really is that vessel that helps young people realize their potential, not only as athletes but as people as well. So I loved how PCA meshed development and winning with the ability to teach life lessons and impact our athletes. So before we get going, I want to make sure everyone has a copy of this book, The Power of Double Goal Coaching. Nice, awesome. If you don't have it, grab one before we leave. It's a fantastic resource. A lot of what we'll talk about in this workshop is in this book. And then there's tons of research and examples that we won't get to in our discussions today. So make sure you get one before you leave today. All right, so right now let's start off with some meditation. I'm just kidding. But I want everyone to close their eyes for a minute and think about a fun memory they have from a coach that they played for. For me, I always think about my high school basketball coach. We had games on Friday night and had a quick turnaround, had to be at practice every Saturday morning. And as a high school kid, I'm sure you guys can relate, that's hard for them to get up for. But he always ended the practice with orange juice and bagels for us. And we would sit, we would talk with him, we would talk about the game and joke around, and we all really looked forward to it. So that's my memory, but I would love to hear you guys if you have any memories from a coach you played for.
I'll share one. I played lacrosse in high school, and it was always over like Easter break. So the Easter break practices were always a little tough because everybody else had off for spring break, and we had to go to practice every day. So our coach made sure she did something fun every day. And I don't even remember the letters necessarily, but I remember it was like Maniac Monday, Tough Guy Tuesday, Wednesday. Wednesday was something else. And actually somebody at TI brought up a week that they did too. But this was always my week of lacrosse. And we always had like an Easter egg hunt. Like it was always a really just fun week, intense and hard practices because we didn't have any games. But I just remember that Easter week was always a highlight of my my sports career in high school.
Yeah, similar to mine, like a tough time to be there playing, but also like coach made it really worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else want to share a story?
Sure, I'll share one. Mine also comes from, tough time in start of the season. I went to college in Pennsylvania, so we had to spend the first 2 months inside, and the practices got long. We got sick of being inside, so every 10 practices or so, we would start off our practice with an hour of playing dodgeball in the racquetball courts. So break up into 4 different teams in 2 different courts and have at it playing dodgeball for an hour. So it was great. It was good cardio, but it was also a way to kind of, throw some fun into a period of time that got kind of monotonous.
Yeah, no, those are great memories, way to mix it up. And I think it's important to share these memories because none of us are players anymore, and we're still remembering these fun times and these coaches. And I'm sure that your coaches that you spoke about, they really cared about winning. I know my coach with the Bagels, we won 71 games in a row and 2 state championships. He really, really wanted to win, but I think he realized his impact extended just further than the lines of the basketball court. Something that I learned early on recruiting high school athletes and coaching at the college level is these kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that really resonates with me and really jives well with PCA's mission of, life lessons and winning on the scoreboard. So with that, I want to move into one of the principles of double goal coaching, which is filling the emotional tank. This is getting players mentally and emotionally ready to perform at their best. So take a look at these 2 gas gauges. Which car would you rather be driving?
And full one.
Perfect. Obviously, why?
So we can go further.
So we can go further. You could have a Lexus, a Beamer, a Mercedes. It doesn't matter how nice your car is if there's no gas in the tank. And it's the same with players. You can have the stud All-American on your team, but if he isn't emotionally in the right place, it's not going to be good for your program or your team. So let's talk about these players when their tanks are empty, when the gas gauge is down. We know these players to be more pessimistic. They give up more easily, and they're not very coachable. And I'm sure you guys have experienced someone that shows up at your practice and they're just drained. What are some of the things that you see in a player that's not emotionally full? What does it look like to you as a coach?
I think he gives up really easily.
Yeah.
Not as willing to try new things.
Yeah, almost just like tired, not really with it.
Mm-hmm.
Bad attitude.
Yeah, perfect. And why? Why? Like, these kids are generally not bad kids. So there's things that are happening that are draining their tanks. So think about socially, in school and family. Are there things that you can think of that might have happened to them before they even showed up at practice that would have caused their tank to be empty?
Bad grade in school? Bad grade on a test or something?
Yeah, for sure.
Got in a fight with one of their parents.
Yeah, parents mean to them. We get that all the time. Fight with the sister. Sister didn't let me wear her jacket. Horrible.
Boyfriend, girlfriend issues.
Exactly. So let's flip it. When a player has the full E-tank, you know, they're probably a lot of the opposite qualities that we just shared. They're more optimistic. They deal better with adversity. They're more coachable because they're willing to listen. They're willing to take risks and do what you say. So what does this look like when you have a player that's just ready to rock and roll, that's at your practice, can't wait to get going?
They're just the first one there, and they're just aggressive. Every single thing you do. They're just the first one in line, and they're totally psyched. And yes, coach, and what can I do for you? And sounds good, and giving 100% effort all the time.
Exactly. Really making the low E-tank kid look standing out, right?
Yeah.
Any other examples when you see these kids, when you know it's going to be a great day for that kid, they're ready, what do they do?
Typically with the younger ones, you know it's high energy because they're interacting like crazy with everybody else. It may be a little bit of a distraction, but you know that their E-tank is really full because they're just chirp, 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 chirp.
Yeah, almost have to zone them in instead of pick them up. That's a great way to differentiate from the two. So the E-tank is important to performance because when kids have full E-tank, their attitude is better and they are more enthusiastic and they're more willing to work hard, and that is going to lead to more wins on the scoreboard. So the two big things for coaches here are awareness and culture. And you guys just showed great awareness of players with the empty E-tank and players with the full E-tank, just in your examples and your ability to have already recognized it in your own players as coaches. And the other part that we're going to discuss as a group is culture. The culture that you establish with your team can actually affect the E-tank regardless of any of these bad things or good things that had happened to them before they came to the practice. So we want to create a culture that is filling the players' tanks so we can have more success. So let's brainstorm a couple of things that can affect the E-tank culture of your team. So if you could just get into groups of 2 or 3 people and share your ideas about behaviors that coaches and teammates can do to drain a player's tank, and then flip it around and what can coaches and players do to fill a player's tank. All right, got it? So while these discussions are fresh in your mind, but before we talk about them in detail, we're going to do an exercise. So I'm a baller, but I'm not having my best shooting day today. So we're going to I'm going to miss 4 shots, critical shots at the end of a game, and I'm going to ask you guys to respond in a certain way. So the first shot I'm going to take, I'm going to clank it, and I'm going to ask you guys to emotionally drain my tank with your words. So here we go. Ready? Clank.
Oh, that was awful. That was terrible.
All right. Awesome. Not for me, but awesome participation for you guys. All right, this time we're going to drain my tank again. I'm still going to miss, but don't say anything. Just drain my tank without saying anything, just with your actions. Clank. All right, yeah. Grabbing our head, sighing, all those things, non-verbally ways to drain someone's tank. All right. I still am not going to hit this shot. It's still a tough day for me. But this time, I'd love for you to fill my tank and actually fill it with your words, even though I missed the shot. So here we go. Clank.
All right.
Nice job. Good shot. Way to follow through. You'll get it next time.
All right, thanks, guys. It's better for me today. I'm on the rise. Tank's going up. All right. Now I'd like you to do the same thing. No words. Still missing the shot. Fill my tank with your actions. Here we go. Plank. All right. All right, thanks. All right, so let's talk about that exercise. What was the most difficult for you guys to do? Which of those scenarios was the most awkward?
For me, the nonverbal tank filling. I am a tough, hard-knuckled coach, and I don't give positive feedback. So that was tough.
All right, yeah, that's definitely most awkward. Was it the same for you, Kelly?
I think so, because you just feel fake. You know, you feel like you don't want to be going, good job, that was great, when it really wasn't. So
Right.
I think it's hard.
Specifically what you said when you were filling my tank, you said some things that probably felt fake to you, like good job and nice shot, even though it didn't go in. But I thought you did a great job of saying, way to follow through, because that was something specific that the kid remembers, well, at least I felt followed through on my shot. But it is awkward. It's not like something that comes natural to our coaches or to players to fill players' e-tanks in a time of failure. So this is a behavior we have to model. It's a coachable behavior, and we want to encourage our players to do this for each other, in, you know, obviously in good times, but also in times of failure as well. So let's go back to, you know, both the discussions you had with your group and that exercise that we just did, and let's talk about some examples of tank draining behaviors. So what did you guys come up with? Let's hear from each group, if you could, and you can even take what you learned from the exercise as well. So tank drainers.
We talked about ignoring, how sometimes as coaches, you know, you don't know what to say, you're trying not to yell at the player because you know that's not right. So sometimes you just don't say anything at all, and that could be worse sometimes. Yeah,
sure, just look the other way and don't say anything to the kid. Anything else?
We talked about how much of a detriment parents can be, not only, you know, being hard on their own kid, but being hard on other players as well.
Yeah, and that could be criticism and yelling from the stands for sure. And as coaches, I think criticism and correction is a challenging piece, because we need to correct our players to help them improve. But and we'll talk about this in a little bit. We can't be criticism, and without ever filling the tank, because that's how the players get low, and that's an important piece. And we'll talk about how to manage that in a little bit. Any other actions, even from the exercise, that drain players' tank?
I think just shaking your head in disapproval, you know, being able to see that across the court of people just, you know, frustrated and shaking their head.
Nailed it. So those nonverbal actions, the pulling out your hair, the stomping your feet, sometimes those actually stay with players longer than if you just said, hey, you're terrible, because they have that image in their mind, and not only for that day does it drain their tank, but the next time they think about going to practice with you, the next time they think about shooting that shot, they see that image, and I think that's a definite drainer that can be long-lasting as well. All right, let's be happier. Let's talk about how can we fill e-tanks with our coaching, or how our teammates can fill e-tanks as well.
Something we talked about was having a player of the day. So, you know, you tell kids at the beginning of the day, all right, we're going to award, you know, a bottle of Gatorade to the player who tries the hardest and ends up being the dirtiest at the end of the day. So, and then really, you know, reward them at the end of practice for whoever gave the most effort and ended up the dirtiest.
Nice, yeah. So showing your appreciation for those behaviors that you want and really encouraging them. What else?
I like to do shout-outs with my team. Just every time I bring them in for a different drill, I say, okay, I need 3 shout-outs from that drill. And the kids know that a shout-out means it's got to be something positive they point out that somebody else did, and it can't be skill-related. It can't be like she made the shot. It can't be. It's got to be something that she either, you know, she helped me, or she ran really fast, or she picked up the ground ball. It can't be like she scored the most points.
Okay, so it's still specific, but it's not related to skill.
Well, skills, you know, it's sort of skills, but I always say, like, I don't want to hear who shot the most goals.
Oh,
you know, it had to be effort related. It has to be something that they've done over and above what everybody else has done.
And I like that you give them parameters in that, because I think with coaching, I think praise is the go-to. Everyone thinks, let's just praise these kids and that will pump them up. But sometimes if it's not specific, if it's not truthful, if it's not genuine, you know, kids are smart, and they know that you're just saying it to try and get through the positives. And I think, you know, at Harvard, where we coach, our head coach actually has not allowed our players anymore to tell each other nice layup. we are, we really stress our culture of pumping each other up and filling the E-tank. But at one point, we were doing a layup drill, and all the kids were like, "Nice layup, nice layup." And she stopped, and she's like, "You are Division I basketball players. You've been making layups since you were in 2nd grade. Like, there's no defense. Be more genuine. Be more specific. These are not good examples of how to pump your teammates up." And that stuck with me. And I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Whiplash. Has anyone seen it?
Yeah.
The 2 words that are most damaging in the English language is "good job." So we want to praise our kids, but I love that, Kelly, because you are getting them to think deeper than just "good job." And also, you guys did a great job of this in the exercise, just those nonverbals, the clapping, the fist pump, the smile, all those things are great tank fillers that you can use. It's really important to just have an awareness of what drains a tank and what fills a tank, because if it is tied to performance, we want to make sure that we know, which actions our players and our coaches are doing that are going to impact that tank one way or another. So being attentive to filling the tank means understanding the magic ratio. And we think of the magic ratio at PCA as the ratio of positives to criticisms. And this is something that's been studied in many different settings, in marriages and schools and sports. And at PCA, we've kind of synthesized all this research to come up with our magic ratio. And again, it's positives to criticisms. And if we could have some great guessers in the audience, if anyone wants to give a shout out, what do you think the amount of positives we need to get to 1 criticism?
I think 3.
3?
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5.
5, nailed it. Ding, ding, ding. Did you look ahead in the book? What the heck? Yes, 5 to 1. So kids thrive in school when it's 5 to 1. Married couples stay married. Kids perform better in sports. All athletes do. And remember, we're not talking about crazy positives in a row. So if you want to correct something, we don't have to be like, because we would all go crazy trying to say 5 positive things. You're already filling your players' tanks, whether you know it or not, with nonverbals, with your culture, with your demeanor. So we want to just make sure that we're not having to talk incessantly just to say that criticism. There's plenty of things that we can do even without having to do it all on your own. So we've talked a little bit about culture today. What are some other ways that you could establish a culture of tank-filling behavior so that you're not having to give 5 compliments or 5 positive things to each kid just to tell them, hey, drive through on your shot? Can anyone think of any type of way to establish that?
Ensure that your players are doing it for their teammates.
That's awesome. How would you do that?
Probably just have a conversation around why tank filling is so important, and make each individual player understand, when you have your tank filled by somebody else, here's how good it feels. So think about how much better it'll feel if you're filling somebody else's tank. So kind of teach them, give them the tools they need, and then give them the emotional attachment to it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we even at our level, we make it super specific. If we feel like we have players that their energy is dropping or their tanks are being drained, we'll say, hey, this is a drill, and we have a big crim, little crim program where they have partners, and it's 2 or 3 minutes, and you got to get after it, and you got to fill each other's tank and raise the energy. So even teaching them why and then giving them specific parameters, I think, is one way to really just zone in on tank filling. Anyone else have any ideas about how you can kind of give some of the responsibility to someone else so you're not doing all the tank filling yourself?
One of the things I like to do is at my parent meeting in the beginning of the season, I talk about how as soon as your child comes out of the game and for the whole entire ride home, you do nothing but tank filling. So you're not allowed to say one word to your kid that's critical at all after the game or the entire ride home unless your child asks for your advice. Then you're allowed. And you still can't do it on the drive home. You still have to wait till the game is over, when you're sitting in McDonald's with ice cream in their hand and they ask, Mom, how do you think that shot was? Then you can be honest. But other than that, only tank filling. So it's helped me a lot because the parents get they just know that's a black and white rule. They're not allowed to drain a tank at all.
That's awesome. And the fact that you have that relationship and can pass that on to your parents is awesome, because your culture is extending past the hour or 2 hours that you have these kids, and you can really do a lot to ensure that they're getting their tank filled in other ways too. That's great. Any other ideas of how to fill a tank? No?
Assistant coaches, make sure they understand the rule as well.
Nice. Yeah, nailed it. So there's lots of voices happening at practice if there are more than one coach. So that can kind of create lots of opportunities to get to that 5 to 1 ratio. If you guys want to read about more tank filling, ways to fill tanks and different activities you can do to get to that 5-to-1 ratio, Chapter 6 in the Double Goal Coaching book is great. There's tons of examples, good for all sports, good for all levels. So I would love it if you check it out. Thank you so much.
That was perfect. Nice job. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
I love it when I get into I try to write, these feedback for you, and I find myself so many times just watching. I just want to hear what you have to say. I'm like, oh, I need to write something down. It's good. It's good though. I'm writing down more ideas than I am feedback. But how did you feel doing that, Lindsay, versus the way you did it with the coach? I mean, I know it's weird on the video screen, but how did you feel kind of running through it as if you were presenting it this time?
I just like the topic, and I like the structure that we have to go through it. I thought that was the biggest difference from the other workshop that I did. Is kind of on my own to make some of the structure for that. So, and I was really grateful for both of you guys being so interactive and participating, because it's a small group. So I really appreciated that.
Mm-hmm. Sure, absolutely. Is there anything you would have done differently than you did this time?
I didn't love the end. I didn't love the just trying to get people to think of different ways to feel have other people contribute. I thought that was a little bit disjointed, so not exactly sure what I would do differently, but it kind of played out differently when I practiced on my own than when I did it with you guys, so sorry about that, but I think I would try and smooth that out. And maybe it's just because it's at the end of one of the principles and I could transition if I was doing the whole thing, but I just felt it was a little disjointed.
Yeah, no, I didn't think it seemed that way at all, but it's a good thing to point out. Somebody else last week said, my dog was so much more helpful than you guys were, because they were doing it in front of their dog. That's a good way to put it. Rachel, did you want to give any feedback before I wrap it up?
I thought it was great, Lindsay. One of the things I really, really loved, particularly in it was your introduction, just making a point of saying, I'm a very competitive coach, and I really love to win. So really getting the point across that, this is PCA. We're trying to, do all this, better athletes, better people. But you really hammered home the idea that winning is not, at the bottom of the list of priorities. So good job.
Thanks.
All right. Do you have a wish for Lindsay that you would have liked to see her do more of or differently, Rachel?
I would kind of agree with the ending. It's almost like with a couple of those questions, it was a little bit redundant. So you had us thinking along this line of what would we do, what are the resources we could use, and it was almost like when we got to that last question of, who else can help you, it was almost like we kind of went over that. Yeah. So you may be able to say more by saying less when it came to that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Just along that lines, I have a couple things in a different order, but I understand what Rachel was saying. It felt like because we talked about it in a group already, how we drain and fill tanks, and then we gave you the verbal and nonverbal examples of draining and filling tanks, and then at the end you were like, what are your ideas? I agree that it was sort of the same question, kind of phrased different ways. Mm-hmm. So what would be, because I think they were all valuable. I think it was good to show verbal and nonverbal tank filling and draining. I thought that was good. I love the idea of doing it in a group. So what could you do to bring it one step further so it's not just us sharing again?
Maybe if I presented some of the ways and asked, has anyone done this, or would anyone consider doing this or using this as a resource?
Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the ideas, that's what I thought of too, open up to page or chapter 6.
Oh, yeah.
And just pull some out that you like, because there's some in here that people don't think of. Like when Rachel said player of the game or player of the day, that's a great tool that a lot of coaches use. They pick a player of the day, but, I always switch that with, what's really cool on page 37, we call it player of the day, but we do it a little differently. So we have a secret player of the day that we agree upon in our coaching staff that the whole team doesn't know about. And then we take it upon ourselves to pump that player up and do only positives for that player. And it's amazing the difference it makes. So just things like that, just giving them a couple examples. The other thing I thought of too is to put them to work. So now that you know this, I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to write down 3 things you're going to implement on your team. Like I call, the tools. Here's what you're going to walk away with. I want you guys to just sit quietly for a couple minutes and just jot down a few ideas of what are you going to do at practice tomorrow to fill kids' tanks differently than you've done already. So it just makes it more realistic rather than just sharing again.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to go back to the beginning again, I loved your intro. I think it's really important to tell people like you're obviously your credentials are great. You're coaching at a D1 school. You're Harvard grad. Like that's all good. You've got that all in your pocket, which is great. But I think it's really important to talk about. I like to win. I like to compete, and I also like progress. So I think that's a really cool way to put it because when you get into like Elm Tree of Mastery, we're talking about progress. We're talking about accountability. So you're kind of weaved all those things, and winning, competition, and progress are the three principles pretty much in a nutshell. So I thought you did a nice job with that. I think just your delivery is really smooth. Your voice is really good. You're smiling. You're giving eye contact. You're not monotone the whole time, and I think that really helps to connect to the audience. I think that was great. I love it when you do a question, not necessarily the most inspirational coach, but what was a fun memory you have? Because especially when you're talking about youth, I always stick with when you're doing a workshop to the youth coaches. I've really stressed the idea of fun. And when you're talking about high school coaches, fun is definitely important. But high school coaches, I find, are more interested in how do I get my kids to win more games? How do I get them motivated? How do I get them to push themselves harder? Whereas with the younger kids, if you really focus on the fun is what's going to push them harder. And we know that it works for the older kids too, but just somehow receiving that idea of a fun memory of a coach was something fun that you did, what made you laugh. I had someone else actually last week, and I stole this idea because I thought it was great, said, what are some qualities that you have that make you a fun coach?
Oh, cool.
Just a simple question right there. And there's so many coaches that are like, am I a fun coach? Maybe I'm not a fun coach. And then he linked it to, we know that 70% of kids are dropping out of sports for the simple reason they're not having fun anymore. So what? And I just thought that was it was a simple question. It was a great question. And I was like, okay, I'm stealing that because I just think that's really good. I like the car analogy. That's one of the stories I like to tell too. Maserati, BMW, whatever it is, it's not going to go very far. The other thing, I always pick out sticky things that you say that are going to stick with me, awareness and culture. That's so simple. There's two things as a coach. You have to know awareness and culture. And that's it in a nutshell. So I really like the way you phrase that. My concern is that a lot of your examples were all basketball. And I'd love to see you bring in other sport examples, especially if you're walking into a workshop of 50 football coaches. It's good to bring up your examples, but then say, okay, let's think about this. I remember my coach said, no more good layup. We don't say that anymore, good layup, because it doesn't have any meaning. Pick your sport. What are some other, what phrases would you use that would kind of be the same phrases that people say that really don't have a lot of value? And have, pull out examples from the audience. Great. For their sport-specific examples. And even that's why I always say for the course especially, read other people's answers. Because I will give water polo. I actually had to do a workshop for water polo. There were 10 water polo coaches, and there is no water polo on the East Coast. Pennsylvania has never heard of water polo. And I'm like, I can't come up with water polo examples. But there was a water polo coach 3 courses ago, and I went back and I looked at his answers, and I'm like, okay, now I even know terminology for water polo. And it just gave it a little bit more credibility to be pulling up other things.
Because you definitely don't want to be wrong.
Exactly.
You tried to do an analogy and you're like.
Yeah, and you don't want to call it a match when it's called a game, and you just have to make sure that and I never claim to know the right thing. I'm always like, sorry, I didn't play water polo, but I'm telling you, this is a principle that's going to work for you. That type of a thing. So I never try to be somebody I'm not, but if I pull out a water polo thing, it's just good to have other examples. But I thought, all in all, I think you did a fantastic job. I wanted to hear more, which is good.
Well, thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice to see.
Thank you.
All right, Rachel, it's all you.
All right.
Whenever you are ready.
Good morning, coaches. Thank you so much for being here to be a part of the Positive Coaching Alliance Double Goal Coach Workshop. We call this a workshop because this is going to be the furthest thing from a lecture that you are going to experience here this morning. This workshop is meant to be interactive, it's meant to be fun, and it's really meant to be a sharing of information not only from me to you, but also you coaches between each other. Hopefully based on the experience that you have, you'll be learning from each other, and I hope to pick up a little bit from you today as well. So if I'm doing my job correctly, you all are going to be talking just as much as I am. Going back to that idea of the fact that you are coaches, you have experience, I am not here to teach you how to coach or to tell you how to coach. Goodness knows we don't want to tell each other what to do. I'm really here to help you fill your tool belt with some additional tools to make you a better coach, to help to make your athletes better athletes, and to really make this experience a good experience for anyone else who is connected to your athlete's athletic experience. So that being said, let me give you a little bit of my background, and I want to tell you a little bit about why I got involved with Positive Coaching Alliance. As our introducer told you, I have played softball in Phoenix and played softball for 15 years and was lucky enough to go on and play all the way through the collegiate level at Dickinson College in Pennsylvania. And after I graduated, PA. After I graduated, I came home to Phoenix and I started doing my own coaching. And the very first head coaching experience that I had, I was coaching a girls 16U softball team. And the first month was phenomenal. It was everything I could have dreamed of. I was putting my heart and soul into this coaching and setting up great practices and this and that. And so fast forward to our first tournament, we do pretty well during pool play. We end up going 2-1 on Saturday, and we get to our first elimination game on Sunday morning, and we have a blow-up, fall-apart inning that just becomes a disaster. Kids are booting the ball, making errors left and right, and things changed very, very quickly when it came to the behavior of pretty much everyone that was associated with the team. I had parents not only screaming at me from the stands, but also coming up behind the dugout, screaming at me for my coaching choices. Had parents screaming at not only their players on the field, but other players on the field. It got nasty very quickly. So we end up losing the game. I'm doing my post-game wrap-up, trying to stay positive, keep my players' chins out of the dirt, telling them, sometimes we go through this, so we don't have to have another experience like this. And so I finish up with that, and I feel pretty good. I'm like, okay, I'm sending my kids away, feeling okay about what we learned today. And I turn around, and there's a group of parents throwing daggers at me with their eyes. So the next 20 minutes, I proceed to get berated for my poor coaching choices and the fact that some players aren't up to par and this and that. Unfortunately, this happened for the next month or so. I had parents and players behaving worse than I had ever seen in my 15 years of playing the sport. And the toughest part for me, when I kind of got through that month and was just realizing that so many things were going wrong, that a lot of that fault really rested on my shoulders. I had failed at the beginning of forming this team. I had failed to create a culture and set standards and set expectations, and therefore I had no rules. I had no parameters for the people that were involved with this team to follow. So fast forward to a couple of years later, I got introduced to Positive Coaching Alliance, and I was so excited for the opportunity to come out and teach coaches like you the resources that you need so that you don't have to experience what I experienced at that extreme level. And so again, really what I'm here to do today is to help you just add to that tool belt so that you don't have to fall into a situation that I ended up in, where I almost got to the point where I didn't want to be associated with the sport anymore, something that I was so passionate about. So that being said, I want to find out where your coaching experience lies. So what I'm going to have all of you coaches do is, when I say go, we're going to stand up and we're going to get in a line across the back of the room here, from least amount of experience to most amount of experience. But you don't get to talk, and you only get 30 seconds. Go. All right, we got everybody lined up. We're going to go down the line, and I want you to just tell me in number of years, how many years you have been coaching. So we go through our line. Wow, we have a lot of coaching experience in this room. This is tremendous. So here's what I want you to think about, because we've all been coaches for at least a short amount of time here. I want you to think that you get close to the end of your coaching career. How do you want to be remembered as a coach? Let's say a player that you had 10 or 15 years ago, out of the blue, kind of comes up to you in a grocery store and is so excited to see you and says, Coach, 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 it's so good to see you. I remember you so well because. What do you want them to say? What do you want them to remember about their experience for playing for you? I'll let you think about for a second, and then I want to hear from a couple of volunteers. So when you've got something you'd like to share, go ahead and raise your hand. how do we want to be remembered as coaches? What is our legacy that we want to leave? Anybody got anything? Lindsay, go ahead.
Maybe that I taught them how to succeed in the moment, but also prepared them for the rest of their life for success in other arenas.
Okay. So not only teaching them how to be a good athlete, but maybe preparing them to be a good human being outside of their sport. It goes along very well with PCA's motto.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
I would like to be remembered as just somebody that the kids had fun. Like even the fact that they came back to me in the grocery store with a smile on their face and were excited to see me, that's probably enough for me right there, that they just had a really enjoyable experience, learned something about the sport, but had fun while they were doing it.
That's great. Because, you know, unfortunately, by the age of, it's either 12 or 13, we've got 70 to 75% of our athletes dropping out of their respective sports because they're not having fun anymore. So bringing fun, injecting fun into the sport, you know, is really what these athletes are going to remember. So Kelly, that's a great example. So, you know, it's important to keep in mind that we can be incredibly impactful on our athletes. And, you know, if we do it right, we'll be lucky enough for them to remember really great things about their experience with us. So I'm going to have you watch a quick video clip of Kevin Durant here. It's my transition into my next slide out of my introduction. And transition into filling e-tanks. Okay, so we've just talked about mistake rituals and how we can find ways to help our kids bounce back from mistakes or negative experiences. So I want to stay along this line of the mental aspect of our players and where their heads can be when they come to us. Our young athletes have a lot going on, not only in their brains while they're at practice with us, but also outside of the time that they spend with us playing our sport. So we kind of call this state of mind that our players can be in their emotional tank. And we make this comparison, jump into our next slide here, we make this comparison to the e-tank on our car. So we look at this slide, and I think it's pretty obvious. If we had the choice to be driving one of these two cars, we'd want to be driving the car with a full tank, right? Why? Yeah. Empty tank, we're not going to go very far. Full tank, we're going to go a long ways. Pretty apparent. It's the same way with our athletes. If they have a very, very high E-tank, they're going to go a long way when they're on that field that day. If it's the opposite, they're not. So it's important for us as coaches to be able to recognize right when our players walk into our practice or one of our games that we know exactly where their E-tank stands so that we know how to respond correctly. So let's talk a little bit about what one of our players can look like when they've got a very low E-tank. Let's say we have a player who comes into practice, just got in a fight with his parents, got his cell phone taken away, failed a test. Give me some of the physicality that we might see on that player as he's walking into practice. What does he look like? And just show me with your body language. Okay, head down, shoulders slumped, maybe with some of our younger players, maybe they're crying, like removing themselves from the group. They're not interacting with the rest of their players. Okay, so pretty easy to tell that that player is having a rough day. So we jump into the next part of our slide here, and we can see on that low E-tank side, here are some of the characteristics. Our players are going to be pessimistic. They're going to give up more easily, and they're going to be far less coachable. They're not going to want to have anything to do with listening to us as coaches. So it's important that, if we can be very alert to those players, that we are. So let's switch over to the other side. We've got a player with very, very high E-tank. She's coming into practice. She just got asked to prom. She aced a test. Let's say this is the best day of her life so far, and she just got accepted to her #1 school of choice for college. So she's having a great day. What does she look like when she's coming into practice? Just some of that physicality of really being on a high, right? Okay. What are maybe some of the characteristics that she's feeling? Tell me, aside from what you're seeing, maybe what is she doing?
She's hyped. She's like talking to everyone, jumping around, ready to roll.
Good. Okay.
She's just up for anything. Like, I call him, yes, coach. That's just like out of her mouth. Like, yeah, coach, whatever you want to do, I'm up. Let's do it.
Right. She's ready to roll. Sometimes with the younger ones, we've got the puppy dog tail wag. They're just so excited to get going, they can barely contain their energy. So those are the ones that not only is it great to have those players coming into practice, but we can use those players to leverage them a little bit to help kind of bring in some of the kids who might be having a low E-tank day. Because these kids with a high E-tank, they're going to be optimistic, they're going to deal much better with adversity, and they're going to be much more coachable. So we love to have those kids walking onto our field and ready to go. So let's talk a little bit about how we as coaches can be responsible for filling and draining an E-tank, because sometimes we're not even aware of the fact that we have a lot of control over how, once our players come to us, we can either fill or, if we're not paying attention, drain their E-tank. So I'm going to need 2 volunteers. We're going to do a quick example here. Great, Kelly and Lindsay, fantastic. Here's what I'm going to have you do. Which one of you would like to be my basketball shooter? Lindsay.
All right, no.
Okay, she's going to be my shooter. Kelly, that means you're going to be my basket.
Okay.
Here's what we're going to do. Lindsay, you are in the state championship basketball game. And we're coming down to the final minutes here. It's a really, really close game. You're getting ready to take a really, really big shot. Okay? So when I say go, you're going to go for that shot. And Kelly, you're going to make sure that she misses that shot. The rest of us coaches here, here's what we're going to do. Lindsay is going to miss this shot, and we are going to show how incredibly disappointed we are in the fact that she just missed that shot. So we are going to drain the heck out of her tank, and we're going to bring her all the way down to that empty tank. So, Lindsay, on 3, you're going to go, and you're going to miss that shot. 1, 2, 3.
Ooh, that was horrible.
Oh, how horrible.
You suck.
Okay.
Don't shoot that.
Lindsay, how are we feeling here?
Demoralized.
Demoralized? Okay. What else?
No confidence and embarrassed.
Okay. That second one was important. No confidence. So let's say the next time back down the court to your end, somebody passes you the ball. How likely are you going to be to take another shot?
0.
Not at all, right? You're passing that ball off to somebody.
Passing, yeah.
Okay. So, coaches, here's where we start to understand that, if we are draining our players' E-tanks, not only are we wrecking them emotionally, but we're taking away their confidence. They may not be amped to take another shot with an opportunity like this because we've just taken away a lot of their confidence. So, Lindsay, guess what? You do get to take another shot. And unfortunately, you're going to miss this shot as well. So, basket, I need you to make sure that she doesn't miss this shot. Coaches, here's what we're going to do. We're going to drain tanks again, but this time we're going to do it completely non-verbally. So, as coaches, it's tough because we know sometimes we have to keep our mouths shut in tough situations, but our emotion may come out in other ways with our body and showing it physically. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead and show Lindsay how you feel after she misses this shot. And Lindsay, you're the type of player who, when something doesn't go right on the court, the first person you turn to and look at is your coach to try and, get some support from. So after you miss that shot, I want you to turn around and find your coaches to try and look for some support. All right. 1, 2, 3. Shot goes up. She misses. Coaches? Okay. So, Lindsay, what was the first thing you saw when you looked over at your coach?
Disappointment, grabbing their head or their hair.
Okay, so go ahead and show me what you saw. Just replicate it. All right. So, a coach being a little bit disappointed, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, coaches, we start to understand that the physical or the nonverbal response can be just as detrimental as the verbal. Believe it or not, with kids, nonverbal responses stick with them 10 times longer than the verbal ones do. It creates that image in their head, and it's tough for them to get it out of their head. So we need to be really careful with how we react non-verbally as well. Okay, Lindsay, I'm going to have you take one more shot. And I want you to cover your ears really quickly so you can't hear what I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay, Kelly, you're going to make sure that she misses this shot. coaches, what we're going to do now is we get to fill a tank. So we're going to do verbal and nonverbal filling here. So I want you to go nuts. We need to make sure Lindsay is up for, even though she misses this shot, we know that if she gets the ball again, that she's going to be able to bring it back down and take a shot because she's got the confidence. So we're going to fill the heck out of her tank verbally and nonverbally. Okay, Lindsay, are you ready? On 3, you're going to go up and try and make that shot again. 1, 2, 3. She misses. Awesome.
Oh, nice try, Lindsay. Way to get the ball. Way to get the shot off. Good job.
You're fabulous. Okay, Lindsay, how do you feel now?
Better, a lot better.
Good. What did you see?
Enthusiasm, hand motions, smiling.
Okay. All right. So there's about 30 seconds left in the game now. Ball comes back down to your end. That's okay. You don't need the ball. But ball comes back down to your end after you've missed this shot. Are you a little bit more confident now to take the next shot?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You've got people supporting you, right? Okay, so we're going to jump into the next slide here. So, you know, as we look at this, we talk about these tank drainers and tank fillers really quickly. And first of all, volunteers, thank you so much. You guys did a great job. You can go ahead and go back to your seats. We talk about these tank drainers and these tank fillers, and a lot of times as coaches, we don't necessarily think about what it is that we're doing and how our kids are going to respond to it because we're so caught up in the moment. But we should pay attention to the fact that, you know, these tank drainers, sometimes criticism and correction, sarcasm, this is a big one because a 15-year-old's perception of an adult sarcasm is very different from ours. Ignoring and those nonverbals, like we talked about, are can be really, really detrimental. So on the flip side, the things that we did really well as coaches in that tank filling, we talked about the positive nonverbals. Another one is listening. So whenever, you know, we ask our players a question, make sure that we're really listening to what they have to say. Expressing appreciation. Thank you for being on time. Thank you for picking up the equipment. And the last one here, truthful and specific praise. This is something that, you know, as coaches, as athletes, sometimes even as parents, we don't even think about the things that are coming out of our mouth when it comes to that praise that we're giving. But, you know, Lindsay, if I were to tell you after that first shot that you missed, if I said, Lindsay, good job, does that do anything for you?
No.
No, right? You missed the shot, so it wasn't a good job by any means. But if I turn around and I said, Lindsay, really good job getting open for the shot, really good arc on the ball, and a really good follow through. Nice, not nice job, but keep going. We're going to get the next one. A little bit more effective?
Definitely.
Yeah, okay, because I'm being truthful and specific. So something to make sure that we keep in mind that as we are giving positive feedback to our athletes, we don't want to blow smoke because regardless of what age they are, they're going to see right through it. Okay, jumping into our next slide here. So we talked about, you know, truthful and specific praise is an example that we use. Some other good examples that we can use in page 32 of your book, if you want to go ahead and grab your book, are some other tank fillers that we can use to make sure that we're keeping our kids on that high. One that I really enjoy using as a coach is what we call the magic ratio, and you can see in here that magic ratio is 5 positives to 1 criticism. Now, I understand that as a coach, it is difficult to get to that point where you're giving 5 to 1. And we doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be saying, all right, Kelly, way to show up on time to practice. Good job having all your shoelaces tied. You know, your energy is really good today. You did a really good job getting to that ball. You know, your positive attitude is really great, but I need more hustle out of you. How did that feel, Kelly?
Not good. It was confusing.
You too, right? So it's not a matter of trying to compress all of these 5 to 1s into one experience. We want to spread them out a little bit more and make sure that over the course of a period of time, we're striving for 5 to 1. If you're the type of coach who, you know, maybe you don't give out a lot of positives, this is going to be a little bit of a journey. it's going to be a journey to gain authenticity and authenticness with how we deliver this positive message. So the first time one of these positives comes out of your mouth, it may feel awkward. And you may even have your players being like, Coach just told me that, I made a really good shot and that I'm putting forth really good effort today. What's wrong with him? However, the 100th time it comes out of your mouth, it's going to feel natural, and your players are going to appreciate it a lot. So continue to try and make that effort to make it authentic, and it's going to have a really positive impact on your players. Thank you, guys. That's all I have.
Woo-hoo. Nice job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. How'd that feel, Rachel, versus doing it for the athletes?
Unfortunately, it felt a little bit disjointed, and I think it's because I had so much of the athletes workshop crammed into my head from yesterday morning that kept, as we started to go through the topic, I kept thinking back to stuff that I said yesterday, and I'm like, nope, can't say that. This is not about athletes.
Yeah.
So, but I think for the most part, it went pretty smoothly. I think I've got some rough areas to kind of smooth out, but went smoothly.
Yeah, and that's normal too. I've done parent workshops, and halfway through, I'm like giving coaching examples. I'm like, what am I doing? You just forget, like, wait, I'm talking to parents, not coaches, because sometimes you just get on a roll, and I'm like, oh my gosh, wait, parents, you need to think about this differently.
Right.
That's good. Is there anything you would do differently?
Yeah, I think I was a little bit redundant. Trying to go back to the slide that I was talking about here. A little bit redundant during the second slide in talking about the verbals and nonverbals. I think I repeated myself a couple of times in there, and it may have just been as a way for me to not say I'm trying really hard to not say so when I go into that mode, I just start saying something so I don't go into so I think I end up repeating myself more than I need to.
I didn't pick up on that, but that's a good way to be. Wait, yeah, no, I didn't. I don't know if Lindsay caught it, but I didn't catch up on that. Lindsay, do you have some feedback for Rachel?
Yes, I really liked how you started. I thought it was really strong and really clear. I liked the phrase of sharing information in both directions. I thought that was kind of set the tone for the collaboration. I liked how you introed legacy, and I actually liked how you transitioned from, because I think that's something I didn't include in mine, was transitioning from the Elm to the E-Tank, and then comparing the two E-Tanks and the kids. And then I thought I liked how you gave examples of praise, so you didn't just say, like, this is the wrong way to give praise. You actually, it was kind of interactive, and you had, you gave an example and modeled the right way to give praise, which I thought was cool.
Yep. Anything you would like to see Rachel do differently, or?
I think I thought you did a great job, Rachel. The thing that I thought I liked your why story. I liked the message, the pay it forward message. I didn't necessarily think it was too long, but I maybe thought at the end you could generalize a little bit from, like, that experience you had to how, it can be prevalent with all types of parents or all types of sports, to kind of segue a little bit differently into PCA. But I thought that's a really powerful story, so worthwhile to share.
So do you mean, when you say generalize, how specific, like, meaning this is something that we may run into as coaches, whether it be with parents or other coaches, or
just, like, I thought you did a good job taking the blame, but saying, like, I made this mistake, and, through my experience realized, like, these types of cultures are pretty prevalent, but there are things that we can do across sports. Again, I thought it was a good story. I just, like, I was kind of, like, sad for you a little at the end.
Okay, all right. So maybe make sure that it's not like a story of kind of like a pity party, but tie it back in a little bit. I think I get what you're saying. That's great feedback. Thank you. Because I started working on this intro story at TI, and it went very, very differently at TI, and people were like, you can't do it that way. So it's like it gains a little bit more from whoever listens to it. So that's good. Thanks, Lindsay.
Along with that story, I thought it was a great story. I think it was awesome because you made me remember what it was like to be a first-year coach. And, like, when things are going well, you're like, this is awesome. I'm doing a great job, But, when it hits the fan and things go wrong, like, anybody can be a great coach when you're winning. And when things are going great, it's when you're not. And I love the way that you said the fault was mine. I realized that I had not put a culture out there. I had not taught these kids how to, or the parents or whatever, the culture that I wanted on the team. I thought you hit that really, really well in the very beginning. What I would have liked to see, and hopefully you'll do this too, is thread that throughout your workshop. Like when you're talking about just the e-tank section, just to stop for a second and go, you know what, I realized, because you even brought it up, like you have to teach kids, your players, how to fill tanks because it's not a natural reaction. That's something I should have done with my softball team. You know, like just constantly bring it back to things that you did learn. And even when you're talking about culture, bring it back to that. Like, okay, now if I could go back in a time machine and do it again to that softball team, I would have taught my team this, honoring the game culture, or I would have taught them about mastery, or, you know, just to bring it back to the story, because I think it's a really great story. And the fact that you pointed out that you had a lot more to do with the problems that were happening, because I think as coaches a lot of times we want to blame the parents and blame the kids, and you know, these parents don't know how to parent, especially, I know I did, especially before I had kids. So I was like, these parents are crazy, until you have your own and you're like, okay, I'm crazy too. So I think it's just nice to have a thread that comes back, because I think it's a good solid story that you can have running throughout. I thought your energy and your animation was great. Both of you have a very conversational style that, you know, you're an authority, but you're not the boss, and you're not the expert on coaching. You're the expert on sharing this information, which is, it's a fine line to do that well. And I think both of you guys do that really well. The one thing, again, I love, you know, within the first 5 minutes, you had them up and moving around, which I think is really good. And that's always something that, just to show, you did a good job at showing the experience in the room, but also validating that. And I like to, you know, pump them up. Like, these coaches over here, you've been in this for a long time, maybe even taking it one step further and saying, why are you coaching as long as you have? You know, get that out from some of the super experienced coaches, because I have had coaches that have said, I've been coaching for 44 years. And I just stop and pause for a minute, and I'm like, wow, why? And I've said that to people before, and they look, I'm like, why would you coach for that long? And the answers that you get are unbelievable. Because I always say, you know, I know you're not doing it for the money. Coaches are not making as much money as they should be. So just one step further to do that.
Thanks.
I think you did a great job, you know, with explaining the e-tank really well. I thought you were very clear and you were concise and what it is and how important it is and how valuable it is. And you kind of hit all the learning styles. You know, we can see what the kid looks like. We understand the results. The one thing that, actually I'm going to mention this for both of you, that sometimes I just think of ideas. The one thing that I like to link emotional tank to is emotional intelligence, because that's something that's really big in all different types of research right now, that, you know, all things being equaled, emotional intelligence is usually a more valued measure of success than even academic intelligence or athletic intelligence. So how are we going to raise our players' emotional intelligence? Well, the way that we do that is to fill their emotional tanks. So it's just like kind of a buzzword. A lot of people have heard about emotional intelligence, especially if in the corporate world, just to bring it one step further. The other thing that I wanted to mention that I always bring up at my workshops too, just a little side note when you're doing e-tank, is that we have e-tanks too as coaches. And just to be aware that sometimes we show up at practice and our e-tanks are low. And you're showing up and you have these little athletes that are like raring to go, and you're like, man, I've had a really bad day. You know, just to throw it out there, what can you do as a coach to raise your emotional tank level? Or what, you know, the best way to raise your tank level is to see the kids around you just having a blast. So maybe if you're really having a bad day and you know that ahead of time driving to practice, maybe make the first 10 minutes of practice freeze tag, diaper tag, dodgeball, something that you'll just be able to laugh and have fun. You know, it's just kind of a good little section to add in there, because I think it happens a lot.
That's a great idea.
What else? What else did I say? Oh, I know. Again, I think I could picture how you would run the animated example of filling tanks and draining tanks. I think both of you guys did a great job with that. Again, I just want to, and I'm over my time here, so if you guys have to run, let me know. The one thing that I wanted to even share with Lindsay, and I know Rachel, you saw it. I actually did my first trash-ball game at a workshop on Saturday.
How'd it go?
It went great. I did it a little bit differently. At Trainer Institute, one of the trainers from Hawaii, Lindsay, showed an example of how he plays trash-ball. And he does it at the parent workshops. And it was really loud, really crazy, really animated. He has the parents get on teams of like 10 people. And he has a coach, assistant coach, 3 players. He's got parents cheering. And he gives them like roles to play. Like, you're a parent who's draining tanks. You're a parent who's filling tanks. You're an assistant coach. And he has them, they take pieces of paper and they, roll them up in a ball and they toss them over their shoulder into a trash can. And they have to, like, one at a time, throw as many balls as they can over their shoulder into the trash can. And they keep scoring. I mean, it's really well orchestrated. Well, I realized for my workshop on Saturday there was no way that I could pull that off without some serious, things. But it actually worked really well because I've been doing what you guys have done for years. Somebody's the basket, somebody's the ball. But what I did, I had athletes, and I just had 2 shooters, and I had 2 coaches, and I had 3 teammates. So I had them like head to head. I had 1 trash can in the center, and they each got 5 pieces of paper, and the assistant coaches crumbled up 5 pieces of paper into, so you get 5 shots and you get 5 shots, and they happened at the same time. And so I had the coaches on both. One was a tank filling coach, one was a tank draining coach. One was a tank filling assistant coach, one was a tank draining assistant coach. And then the ones over here, there's 3 teammates. You guys were the drainers, you guys were the fillers. And I actually had 2 index cards, one that said filling and draining, and they just picked it out of the hat. So I didn't tell them, like, you have to be the drainers. So this whole side of the room, while they were doing trash ball, when I said go, they had like 10 seconds to get as many shots in as they could. So the shooter just threw the little balls over their shoulder into the trash can while this guy was getting screamed at by his team, like all negatives, terrible, terrible. And this person's team was like, awesome, you're good, keep going, keep going, keep going. It was great. So then when we stopped it, and I also had like the scorekeeper, how many did you get in, how many did you get in? Well, this team, neither of them got, like, they each got 1 in. So I was like, okay, let's think about the focus of this. If you were scoreboard focused, who just won this? And they're like, well, they tied. I'm like, exactly. But who played harder? Who was more motivated? And I talked to the athletes. This one that was getting their tank drained, how did you feel? And he was like, I felt horrible. I felt bad. I was sweating. I felt like I kept missing. I was letting my team down. And then I asked this kid that was getting his tank drained, how did you feel? And he was like, I felt good. My team was on my side. It was fun. I had a great time. And then I just stopped and said, which kid would you rather have on your team? And so it was actually a lot of fun for the kids. And I would definitely do it at the coaches workshop too, because it brought in a little competition. Like, I think anytime you bring in competition, it's fun. And it just gave them a chance to see it rather than having the whole room in chaos. It was just like 5 people I brought up. So it worked out really, really well. So I just wanted to share that with you guys when you were talking about it because it was cool.
Kelly, can I ask you a question? Was one team had like the draining coach, the draining assistant, and the draining teammates?
Yep.
Or did they pick randomly? Okay.
No, they all did. I just had the shooters pick. Are you going to be the draining team or the filling team?
Perfect. Okay.
And and the kid picked draining. And he was like, oh, I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. Come on, let's do it. So it was really fun. Because what I've also done before, just with the basketball example, with the guy with the basket and the shot, I've had one side of the room be the draining side and one side of the room be the filling side. And so the easiest way, okay, this, Lindsay's going to miss her shot. This side of the room, you're going to drain her tank. Go. And they just show how they're really loud and they're screaming and they're draining it. Okay, this side of the room, Lindsay, you're going to shoot again and you're going to miss. Now this side of the room, you're going to fill her tank. Go. And I don't give any other instructions. And the difference in volume and energy level, like the drainers are like out of control, like standing up and, oh, you're horrible. The tank fillers are like, good job, Lindsay. Like And so it's just really obvious, like, okay, which one was easier to do? And they all say, oh, the draining. Well, that's what society tells us to do. And it's just so obvious that, like, it's hard to drain or to fill tanks when they haven't gotten the shot. They haven't played well. So it's just another way. And then I'll do it one step further and go, okay, now you know what we're going to do. Drainers, can you be as loud as the fillers? And for the kids too, the athlete workshops, it's just fun to make it a competition. And then by the end, you get the kids that are the fillers, like screaming as loud as they can with the drainers too. So just another, one step further, another idea to do. But again, I think both of you did a fantastic job. I talked to Ruben about this beforehand, about where to go with you guys, and we both agreed, like, you two are going to be instantly certified in Double Goal Coach 1. So you guys can be going on to apply for workshops. You're in a little different situation because you both have presented workshops before you finished the course. But once you guys were out there, you did it. You did it solo without having a mentor person with you. So basically for this, it was just a matter of, do you know the content and do we feel comfortable sending you out there? And I absolutely do. So you can both congratulate yourselves. You're considered officially, you're officially certified. So, I'll tell Sonia, and moving on from here, she will give you guys both the onboard call. I don't know if she did that with you both yet, like how to apply for workshops and all that kind of stuff. Did she do that?
We got the email, but I didn't call her yet.
Okay, so she goes through like a half an hour worth of everything you need to know, everything you ever wanted to know and didn't want to know that you now will know. So you guys will be certified and you can apply for workshops. So if there's ever, the way that we work it from here, Ruben is in charge of Phoenix and Eric's in charge of New England. Eric Eisendrath. I'm here no matter what. If you guys have any questions or about anything or want ideas, I'm always here. But they're going to be kind of your like in charge of people. So moving forward, if you look on the EMS, which you guys both probably haven't looked on that yet, I assume. You look at the workshop management system, so it can show you workshops that are coming up to apply to. If you notice that like in the next month there's more athlete workshops or parent workshops or whatever, if you're not certified in it, you just let Ruben know or let Eric know and say, hey, I'd love to get certified in this next workshop so I can start presenting it. Because Lindsay, as you said, like once you've got one, they're all the same framework. It's just a different, different way to come at it. So you guys are ready to go on your own, and I'm excited.
Well, thanks for all your help. This was an awesome course. It's really like great preparation. So thanks for everything you did for us.
Well, it's a lot of time commitment, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And I just appreciate you jumping out there before you were finished, because that takes guts to do that. So we appreciate that, and hopefully we'll keep you out there and keep you going.
All right. Well, thank you.
Kelly, are we your last ones? Is everybody done now?
Tonight. We have 4 going tonight.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And if you'd like to join us at 9 o'clock tonight, we have 2 going in Spanish. So
oh, nice.
I'm trying to find like Spanish-speaking friends of mine. I'm like, can you get in on this workshop? Because I haven't taken Spanish since my sophomore year in college. So.
Bienvenidos?
Yeah, exactly. And they both asked if they could do their entire mock workshop in Spanish. So it should be fun. But yeah, and then we're done. So it's exciting. This group has done really, really well. So it's great to keep everybody hustling and moving through. I just like to get people like certified so they can get out there and do it, rather than just say, yeah, you're done the course and now you don't do a workshop for another 2 months. I'm trying to get everybody moving and out there. Strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah, well, and considering how many workshops, I mean, it sounds like there have been a ton scheduled in August. I don't know if it's the same way on the East Coast as it is out here, but we've got tons and tons of opportunities. So.
Yeah, well, August has been the highest month on record. We did 400 workshops in August, and that was the highest the PCA's ever done. So it is, and that's why everybody's like, are these people done yet? Are these people done? Because we need them certified like now. I'm like, well, we'll see what we can do. But no, we really appreciate you guys have done a great job, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Yay, hope to see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, take care, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.